Oui. Okay, welcome to part 2. Our review of Vayikra and Tanit Esther and insights into Purim and the relationship of Mikra and how Keri becomes Yakar and becomes the tikkun of whatever went wrong initially with the relationship, specifically to Isha, as we saw in terms of Gittin, which becomes now the tikkun of Esther and the Vanahafachu of Yim Shabbat, the creation of the Beis Hamikdash and the Kevat of Gever and the Beis Hamikdash of Shlishi and Yecheskel. All of these issues are part of the rebuilding of the Beis Hamikdash from Purim, and that we got to through analyzing the inyanim of Gittin and their impact on the Mizbeach and their impact on the Churban, finding how the impact on the Mizbeach is to be linked directly to Vayikra, and how Vayikra itself comes directly from the Kriya of Adam Arishan, which creates the very behemoths that are meant to be built here, and how incomplete Vayikra, because of the Lo Yitboshashu, ends up being a violation of the Lo Tov V'Yot Adam, which then becomes, in Bilam's term, the loss of Kriya becomes, in Bilam's terms, both magical thinking, which is Mechashefalot Chayeh, and having a relationship with Behema, which views them as not something that is part of, defined by the Kriya of Adam, but rather is an alternative. And because of that can be related to exactly as Mrs. Adam was meant to be related to, and there's no specific relationship to Basar at all, really, which is just viewed as an accidental matrix for carrying the wonders of my intellect. All of this was part of a profound interrelationship of Mikra and Keri on the one hand, and Kriya on the other, which becomes the relationship of the Kriya to the Hafsarkes, as Rashi tells us, and which the Sifri learns did not have a Kriya, so that the balance of Moshe Rabbeinu himself between those Hafsakot, where there could be no Kriya, and he needed to be mitbonen within, outside of that Kriya. The same way that we had two different levels of the nature of Gittin, in which Sanei Shalach or Sanui HaShaleach, in which we had two completely different levels of Maimon Sinai, in which one of them was Haisha Shenatata Imadi, which was Keneged, the Moda'ah Rabba Lioraita, which is the Tukan with the Shlemus of the relationship to Isha in Purim, which becomes the Kimu V'Kiblu, which, as Rabba says in Shabbos, is Bikan Moda'ah Rabba, other Kiblu V'Meach Hashverosh, then becomes at the same time the Tikkun of Isha and of Beis Hamikdash in terms of Esther, and treats the world in a completely new way, which is called the dawn, Ayelat HaShachar. That Ayelat HaShachar is the end of Nisim, which means that now, as the Gemara tells us, Nes becomes embedded in the nature of Mikra, which is the reason that we celebrate the Pur on Purim, because that means that actually the potentialities of all possible results that need to be Revach Batzalai Yamod Yudim Mimakom Acher are built into the nature of Mikra itself and are not considered to be, remarkably, something that would have to come from the outside at all. There is no interference necessary, which means, according to Amalek, means zero. Because anything could happen, since anything could happen, and this is what happened, and we evaluate all things in terms of their rega, so it happened. Nobody, as I never tired of pointing out, nobody would believe that it was Maxwell's demon suddenly active in this room if all of the air moved over to one side in a highly concentrated form, which got so hot that it started a fire in the corner and left everybody here violently decompressed and shattered on the floor. Nobody would think it's Maxwell's people. But these things happen once every quintillion years or so. So, especially if you've got dangerous topics going on, you never can tell. So there we were with understanding the nature of Mace Nister and Mikra itself, and seeing how this relates in itself to the amazing transition from Keri, which at Maimon Har Sinai was absolutely intolerable. Even the actual substance of genetics was intolerable because of the nature of its wastefulness and its not having any kriya associated with it, so that the very Keri on Har Sinai, which is a violent Altachur Elisha, becomes here in Purim Yakar, and becomes the clear, most valuable thing that could exist in Kol Ha'olam Kulai, other than the Torah itself, the information that's embedded in the ultimate Sechira. The most incredible Yakrus in the world is, of course, one human gene cell, one human cell capable of reproduction, or any cell that contains that information, obviously, but doesn't have the same kedusha because it cannot reproduce. Therefore, lacks in the yakrus, which is the reason that yakar ve'en Hashem, amavtala chasidav as well. The individual human, what has emerged, all of it through Mikra, what has emerged is what provides us all possible mace, and nisim geluyim become the darkness, become the same world that Amalek lives in, such that the Shachar, in terms of Ayelat HaShachar, has to be this transition. Now, the question is, as we saw, that it turns out that Amalek's vision of Ma'aseh Bereshis is the very reason that Chazal tell us that we're supposed to be careful of not being ma'ayin in Ma'aseh Bereshis for this very reason. Mashal l'mad davar domeh, the melech shebanat ta'aklim al ha'ashpa, ein ritzono shel melech. But people will be maskir at the ashpa. And that's exactly what it is that the world has discovered, that everything is built on an ashpa. And what's worse is that that ashpa, in the end, is meant to inherit the entirety of it. Because in an entropic universe, nothing could be left. But the complete loss of any type of specificity, which is the end in terms of entropy. Now, this is where we were holding. And we now need to understand what indeed the options are. Now, amazingly, the Gemara takes a look at the grand achievement of Mikra, which is, of course, Bilam, which is, of course, the one that is so chashav that, as the Medrash puts it, HaKadosh Baruch Hu could share with Bilam things that he could not share with Moshe Rabbeinu. Now, we understand what those things are. Of course, that's the other Medrash. How come it says, as about Skeni Mivalei Tosafot, it's about the Medrash. How come it says that Vayave Elokim el Bilam, Vayavo Elokim el Bilam? What do you mean, Vayavo Elokim el Bilam? Moshe Rabbeinu constantly has to go see HaKadosh Baruch Hu. He's invited in, and somebody's on. It's one thing to say you don't invite me. It's another thing to say you come knocking on my door. What does the Melech have to go to speak to Bilam? So Moshe Lamad Avadomen, two completely different types of relationship. A Melech who has a queen goes to the queen's bedroom. I mean, he doesn't have to keep it secret that he's going to the queen's bedroom, right? So fine, that's wonderful. But he sneaks out of the palace to go to his Pilegesh. So if the king has got a mistress, it's not going to be in front of everybody. It's going to be a sneaking thing. It's not Lefich Vodon. So to HaKadosh Baruch Hu's mistress is Bilam. When the world is not supposed to be, I mean, I understand Kennedy is one thing, HaKadosh Baruch Hu also has a mistress. But what is that supposed to mean? But of course, what would be the idea of a mistress? again, as we've explained many times, that is the medrash that HaKadosh Baruch Hu could share with Bilam things he couldn't share with Moshe. That's exactly the point of a mistress. There are things you cannot tell your wife. This is the Vishochevet Chetecha Shemorim Repicha. Never share everything with your wife. So this is how the Rosh begins the Orcha. This is the Orchos Chayim of the Rosh. You'll destroy a relationship. If HaKadosh Baruch Hu tells Moshe, this whole thing is garbage, you think that's going to make for a lovely relationship? But, to your taxi cab driver and your barber, you can tell anything, what's the difference? I don't care. That's a pshat of Asher Korcha, I don't care. So everything becomes rega, so the things that are impossible at an early stage of development to share are indeed impossible to share.
I'm in the barber.
I'm in the barber, that's right. That's right. So the truth is that up until the time that we reach here of understanding for the first time the interrelationship of the Kriya to the Keri in the Vayikra and the Vayikra, up until here, there was no way to share with anyone but Bilam. That is to say, the relationship that HaKadosh Baruch Hu had with the world. It's so clear. If you think about it, it sounds esoteric. If you think about it, it's the most obvious thing in the world. It takes an immense amount of time for the species to reach the level of understanding of what is going on in the world before it's possible to discuss things not as belief systems, but as the discovery of the way things are. Thousands of years it took to be able to strip down belief systems, starting with Avram Avinu's original desperate battle against these projections and these systems of beliefs that he literally risked his life to destroy. And anyone who throughout the Dairas did the same and risked their lives to destroy, which included Newton, as we pointed out. Newton risked his life, and he kept secret. He kept secret his Emunah in Hashem. He kept secret that he was a Talmud of the Rambam. He kept all of this. He kept secret, and it took hundreds of years to find out what was really going on in Newton's head. So. Because, in fact, it's very dangerous. You can't tell people what's going on. Galileo also. So it's an unbelievable thing. It literally traces back to Avram Avinu to the point where these people trace themselves back to Avram Avinu. It's unbelievable. Huh? Not the same, not in the same way, but all of the general knowledge of Torah, of Lashon HaKodesh, and so on. Newton was a kafir in Christianity. So, he knew that they would kill him. He was specifically a Talmud of the Rambam. That was Bor. He used to quote the Rambam. He had, different I told you, there were different Torah written in Hebrew that they found in his trunk.
It's a secret even until now.
It is. Most people don't know it.
You tell me he's Jewish.
So to see Newton's handwriting looking like an achron, of course, the Bilchus Sefer Torah, Perek it's like unreal.
He wasn't the Yid.
No, but he wrote in Lashon HaKodesh, V'kosher, the Rambam Bilchus Sefer Torah, and Mamish. Then they gave him Mashikosa B'Sefer Chinuch, by Newton.
Where did you see that?
You can get it online. You get an actual picture. They sold it now. It's sold for fruit. They sold his trunk. It was what's his name? Keats that sold it. He was the one that bought it originally. He kept it secret also. John Keats, the Keynes. The economist, the core of economy. Keynes, yeah, K-E-Y-E-S. Right? He bought it. Anyway, okay, whatever. It's a side. Anyway, so fine. There is absolutely no way, even if you explain it to someone, there's no way to understand it because you don't have any sense of the way in which the world embeds information in a way that is built around Mikra, and that there's no way for anything to have discovered itself or have to come into being without the Zikaron that's a function of Mikra. You can tell someone this, it doesn't mean anything to them. You understand that we live in a world in which we are surrounded by the concept of information, of bits. To us, it's not surprising that everything that's in there, in you, in life, is all just a matter of information arranged on a tape or in the cloud or on your DNA and so on. Yes, you've gotten used to it because you've had 100 years to think about it, so to speak. You grew up with it. It's impossible to give this over to someone. And it takes that time to be able to recognize that you live in a world of information and that there's nothing else there. That your physics is information, your physical body is information. Everything that you care about, think about, and so on is just different forms of information. This changes everything because it's mavlit, the one issue that's missing, which is the Kriya. Don't you understand, until literally the past 10, 15 years, nobody can understand what is the meaning of Kriya. Why is it so important? It's just like a little add-on. It with no way to understand. It's not an add-on, it's all there is. Who would have dreamt that it would mean that? That's just unbelievable. So for the first time, I get serious about Kriya. When Moshe Rabbeinu is aimed on that distinction of the Aleph Ze'ira that takes the difference between Mikra and Kriya, it's the first time that Bilam is not needed. And therefore, in order to be able to have a relationship to Yisrael, who will ultimately have to discover the difference between the chiba that is there in their kriya and a Bilam who has no chiba and yet seems to know more than Moshe does, that has to be stopped. Because the fact that it was possible to have the relationship, which is a purely gufani relationship, in the fullness of the Chol Tzva'am, of a Maisa Bereshis in which a human being is capable of arriving on his own at this understanding and sharing Maisa Bereshis with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, not as a shutaf, but as a good listener and as an understander and as somebody who can phone home. The danger of that to Yisrael is unbelievable. If Klal Yisrael had been able to maintain the relationship on Har Sinai and had engaged themselves in the Kriya, God, talk to Bilam all you want. But because of the fact that now we need the Veniflino, which becomes the unique Mokum for the Shekhinah, in which we're no longer capable of walking through a world of Mikra and feeling, well, what do you mean a world of Mikra? All I see is a world full of potential Kriya, that's all. Don't scare me, it just makes it more powerful. You better do something. Oh, yes, you're right. More Mikra, the better. Unbelievable opportunities, left and right, anything that is wanted. I can make it meaningful and real. Fine. Why do I need to get rid of what I'm doing for? Have God come into every church and talk to everybody. What do I care? You know, obviously you have to care for the animals, you have to care for the Christians, you have to care for the Muslims. Why shouldn't I come and talk to them? But if the whole point is that I confuse spirituality in the sense of Bach's music with the relationship to Torah, and I see HaKadosh Baruch Hu comes into the church when they play Bach, so then to me it's, okay, so there's different approaches to Ruchnis, and all of this is real, and all of this connects, despite the fact that this is an inevitable consequence of the potentialities that are granted by nothing but Mikra without the slightest relationship that's involved at all. It's just that when a person understands what existence behaves like, they have a very interesting relationship with existence. It's a behavioral relationship. It's a gufani relationship, but it's an astoundingly productive relationship. It is very difficult without an iflino anivamcha to be able to tell someone, and that's the problem we have, because we no longer have an iflino, because we no longer have the anan, we no longer have a mishkan. And so everybody comes along and says, "What am I going to waste my time learning Torah and go to university? It's stupid. What am I going to do? Something intelligent in there. What are you going to tell them?" And this is exactly the problem. The problem indeed is that as bad as the ashpa is, and the reason that it creates such a sense of tuma and meaninglessness, it's exactly as bad to have religious ideas of any kind. Because what that does is it simply substitutes for the possibility of having a connection to existence as it is, a need to substitute a vision which you believe is kriyah, but which is a lie that is coming from your own needs and sense of wanting significance. That's even worse than having the awareness of the ashpa, because there's no chance of escape. And it's because of this you've been led into the mecholot ego, round and round and round the ego.
This is the
Because it's driven all the time.
That's what Marx meant by opium of the masses. This sense.
Yeah, I mean, obviously. But this is much worse. It's the idea of going around and around and around and never being able to break out of the circle, which is what drove Moshe to actually go and destroy, right? He didn't care about the ego. And Avraham Avinu didn't care about Avodah Zarah. But he did care about the round and the round and the round. And that's what the Rambam says, V'yada, that the one thing that stops people from ever understanding anything is the fact that they do this. That's all that bothered him. It wasn't a religious issue. It was a human issue. What the heck is wrong with you? Where are you ever going to get? You keep going round and round in circles. Everything will always have its own justification because you want that justification. Now, this is a disaster. So look what happens. Look at the danger of what happens. If, in fact, you are not aware of the interrelationship of Vayikra and Keri. And this is exactly where religion is today, right? Religion does not believe in Vayikra. Purim is not accepted anywhere. It used to be L'Rovam, or at least Mordechai was right. So now he's out of the pale, you know? It's almost as bad as carrying around an iPad. Because he's built on evolution, as Avram was. He's built on Mikra. That's the entire idea. He's built on super Mikra, by the way, because Mordechai is built on the extended Mikra of memes, not only genes. That's why Mordechai is called Mordechai Bilshan, because his focus is on the potential interrelationships of language bits, which goes far, far beyond just biological evolution into a much more rapid evolution of ideas as language evolves. This was Mordechai. The totality of Mordechai was the appreciation of Mikra, and that's why he went there. He was going to Atzbo. He understood. That's where it's happening. The big action is basically in the place where language starts with all of this, the Bilbul of Bavel. And that's where it's at. That's where the internet's going to develop. And that's where Google Translate's going to develop, and so on and so forth. All of this is part of the natural evolution of information. Just let it find itself. The big mistake was attempting to create programs that translate. That's a terrible mistake. Let the computers learn to translate by the way in which everybody uses the language. And they'll soon do a much better job at translating just for Mikra. Don't try to teach translation. That was why it was so horrible originally. It was Google's brilliance. All these awful translating programs and so on, they came up with us idiotic, and you had to keep giving them rules that, this word usually appears with that word, and bigger chance that it's this word. Hey, Who's going to think of all the possibilities? You listen into the conversations of 100 million people for 10 years, and yeah, they're not bad. You learn how to drink. But what that means is that the only possible vision that you can have of anything, of bringing a korban, is as a job. Something that is externally imposed upon you. Because all of it is simply a matter of becoming, as we pointed out, OCD. It's always about big OCD. The behavior of somebody who is acting out on things that are kofalei marchagigis, that are external, are literal psychological behaviors of OCD. He's always going like this, the way an OCD baby is going, right? Literally, that's how he's moving. He's moving his hands the way somebody who's terrified of something is moving his hands. Maybe it should be like this, but it should be like this, and it has to be like that. Why? Because there's nothing that is natural, there's nothing that can flow into what it is that he sees as a real relationship. It's constantly creating and insisting to himself, this is the way it is, 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 this is the way it is. And the more it isn't this way, the more it has to be this way, right? It's amazing. I mean, these are classic. You watch kids that have these psychological problems. It looks like they were just the best for 20 years. It's like, amazing nonsense. Who is it?
Are they doing this?
You ever see Searching for Bobby Fischer? Mm-hmm. So that means that the insufficient recognition of the interrelationship of Keri and Kriya leads to an impossibility to bring korban. Because anybody who doesn't have that does not have the chiba for behema. You'll notice religious people don't like animals. This is the reason why. Because there's no place for me to understand the mind of a dog. Because I don't have any relationship to the behema that is me. Because I deny that behema that is me. I look at my mind as being that which defines things. I don't believe that I evolved and therefore have any fundamental connection to the behemoths that I'm bringing. I don't have any sense of what it would mean to sleep with an animal, to find out what it is in order to give it its name and only then be able to. That sounds sick to me. I don't even know what such a thing could mean. Whatever, they crazy? You say this over to a Christian or to a normal religious person, he thinks you're mere nuts, should be arrested, and so on and so forth. The whole idea of the development of basar, the meaning of bris milah is an embarrassment. We don't talk about that in public, unless you're 8 days old. I mean, yeah, all right, fine. And so on and so forth. These are real things, painful, terribly painful realities, that all of the connectedness that are meant to be there to the actual midah gufanit that is being stressed so deeply by the Rabbeinu Bachya is completely lost. It is not a coincidence that nobody follows Hilchos Deos. Nobody. It's unbelievable. The closest that they could get to something that would sound like Hilchot Deos is by faking a book by Rabbi Yisrael Salanter that was really written by Benjamin Franklin. I mean, that's an unbelievable story. You know, the Yud Gimel Midah is Rabbi Yisrael Salanter. It's taken, lifted completely out of the autobiography of Benjamin Franklin.
You never wrote it?
No, it's entirely Ben Franklin. An amazing Cheshbon HaNefesh, that book Cheshbon HaNefesh, that's based on that, is Ben Franklin's notebook. He had a notebook that he called Cheshbon HaNefesh that had 13 midas, and that he used to go 1 week for each midah and write down each midah and so on.
But he got it from the Rambam.
And what's that?
Ben Franklin got it from the Rambam.
No, he didn't. He did get it from the Torah. I mean, he quotes Psukim in it and so on and so forth, but that's the idea of a midah gufanit. I mean, obviously, you want to be wealthy and wise, and so, that's exactly what the Rabbeinu Bachya is saying. You want to be wealthy, midas anivas will bring you to wealth. You want to be Lifnei Melachim Yityatzev, then you should be an Ish that is Mahir B'Malachto. You know he's famous at all. I don't understand. That's, you know why he writes that? It's unbelievable, right?
The Israelis haven't heard it, they would like to hear it.
זה מדהים, זה אחד מהאנשים המקוריים בעיצוב של ארצות הברית, אז הוא כתב, הוא היה שומר לעצמו חשבון הנפש. זה היה שבוע כל מידה, הוא כתב 13 מידות, והוא כל שבוע הוא עסק במידה אחת, ושמר על המידה הזאת, ואחר כך וחוזר חלילה. אז הוא אמר, דבר מעניין, הוא אמר שהאבא שלו היה מעיר, בבוקר היה מעיר אותו, תשמע בן, חזית האיש מעיר במלאכתו לפני מלאכים יתייצב לפני בעלי אבן, כל בוקר. לפני חשובים, כן? אז הוא היה קם לזה, הוא אומר, וכל החיים שלי ככה, זה אני מאוד הקפדתי על זה. אתם רוצים לדעת? באמת התייצבתי לפני 5 מלאכים. איך זה יכול להיות שאדם כמוני, מה פתאום? זה הולך למלך אנגליה, למלך צרפת, מלך ספרד, 5 מלאכים הוא אומר. רק בגלל הפירוש הפשוט של אותו הפסוק. זה משהו, זה גוי. אז זה גופנית. מה?
אותו גוי שרצה שהשפה של ארצות הברית
יהיה עברית, ככה יהיה לשון הקודש.
Came within 2 votes in Congress.
Yeah. Oh. So what's the solution to such a problem? We understand what's happening. Where does the problem come from? So we have the most amazing Gemara that says where the problem comes from. Here is Bilam, right? And he's like, Yodea das Elyon. He knows the mind of God. And indeed, sure enough, the Midrash says, yes, he was able to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Gemara, Hashta dat be'emto lo have yada, dat Elyon yada. Isn't that amazing? He didn't know how to think like his donkey.
Because he was a donkey.
So what's the riot? You can't get no das Elyon without God. It's a crazy thing to say. Hashta dat be'emto lo have yada. That's ma. מי כן יודע דעת באמצע? נכון. עכשיו צריכים להבין. So that means, that gufa, what the Gemara is telling you, is that the chisaron lies in da'at be'emto lo havayada. And that the tikkun, indeed over here, in terms of Vayikra, and the velo tikkarata Yaakov, and the kriya of Adam Arisha, and the lack of shleimus in Haishar Shenatata Imadi, is the chisaron in the kriya of da'at be'emto.
Adam ki Yaakov can provide this.
I said it already. Yes.
He's
You fell into a
translating it.
Barnea war. No, I said it before he started. So now I got him this time. So this is an ongoing war.
Yeah.
It's 40 years, it's like.
Stop keeping track already.
But it's fun.
Yeah, yes.
It's definitely fun. And it's cute. Definitely cute. Huh? In that band? Yeah, that band. That's what it says in the Gemara. Hashta that band. מה זה? נכון, אבל הוא ניסה להשאיר את זה ככה. זאת אומרת שהקריאה לא הייתה קריאה מספקת. הקריאה זה מה שמביא אותך, בדיוק, לכן לא הייתה לו האלף, אז הוא נשאר בויקר, ויקר נשאר לו לא אהבת הבהמה, כי אין חיבה. זה בדיוק הנושא, נו, זה אנחנו מדברים. Okay, so how do we translate that into something that is real? So what we've seen so far. Is there a real pagan, the Kriya of Adam Rishon, that we could see in the Kriya? No. The only thing that we noted that was of the pogum in Adam Rishon was the fact that there was a Veloyit Boshashu, correct? That Veloyit Boshashu is in fact one of the central things that is addressed by Esther. That's why Esther is called Hadassah. That's why Esther Aitam Matznat et Dvareha. That's why Esther was careful that nothing about her should be exposed, particularly the very relationship that was the relationship that Klal Yisrael had with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, which was a child abuse relationship. Here comes her uncle and takes her and so on. And that's like Yechezkel says about Yisrael, you know. So there you are, a little girl, and that's what you do to us. That in fact led to the problem of the Modar Rabbi, right? The sense that you were overwhelmed at Har Sinai. Those who recognize that that's not only not abusive, but it's the deepest relationship of the Zakartu Lachesed Nu'arayach, and who had sufficient selfhood that it didn't require this whole process of tikkun olam as far as Gittin is concerned, but had sufficient selfhood to feel that that is a raya, that this is the deepest relationship I could have. It's exactly the same as the tikkun of the sense of being raped at Har Sinai. That's why she was the only one who could handle it. But that means everything that we're talking about are all integrated. It's all one issue. So how does that issue of the Veloyit Boshash, the question of whether you feel entitled, remarkably, do you feel entitled to the relationship which is yours? Do you feel, as the Gemara in Gittin is talking about, do you feel that the issue over here is some type of given above which you assert a certain mechanical interrelationship? Well, I don't like the way you cook. What does that have to do with Eishadura? I don't like the way you look. What does that have to do with Eishadura? And so on and so forth. In other words, in terms of the Ikdicha Tafshilot, or in terms of the Matzah Keret Na'imena, what does this have to do with Eishet Nurim? Why doesn't it have to do with Eishet Nurim? It doesn't have to do with Eishet Nurim for the same reason that the Chimiech Aravizeh Ben Dadeh has nothing to do with why it is she's not considered to be rolly to leave her husband. On the contrary, she'd be born deeply with her husband. It's exactly the same in the Kudah. You need to know, as Rachel said to the neighbors, if this is important to my husband, then he doesn't know Banta. And therefore, your dad's tzaddik nefesh Banta, and the dafka not going to put on a dress. And you're going to see that that's going to be the makar of the relationship that he's going to appreciate. I don't need to dress up. Okay. So if that's the case, then that means that the major problem that we have here is the problem that's identified by the Rabbeinu Bachya at the beginning of the parasha. And it means that the relationship that takes Kriya and is able to handle Kriya is only a relationship that is built of Anava as a midah gufanit, which means that the organism appreciates the fact of its being as the most incredible gift without any further issues that need to be attached to it. But take what the implications of such a thing are. It means that you are stripped, as Moshe Rabbeinu was, b'shegam hu basar. You are stripped down to the reality of that which has made you what you are, and have no need or desire to create something external to make you something other than what you are. But the implications of such a thing, oh, I can't believe it. The implications of such a thing is that you are in fact directly in touch with the one thing that nobody else is in touch with, and that is the surprise at the fact that you are. Isn't that so? Any level of entitlement means there is no surprise at being. If they're surprised at being, then you're the most insanely vulnerable thing imaginable. Not vulnerable in the sense of searching for some way to protect yourself. Not vulnerable in the sense of wanting to be religious, which lots of people will use as, okay, I feel, at any minute, if I don't have HaKadosh Baruch Hu protecting me, who knows what could happen to me? Any fool knows that. But vulnerable in the deepest sense, in terms of being itself. The shock and the constant surprise of the fact that there's nothing else there other than that fact of my being here means that I'm completely incapable of veloyut boshashu. Because the minute that I assume anything, then that means that I'm contradicting, by definition, the most fundamental fact, the one fact that has nothing to do with information. Because the fact of existence is not something that exists separate from existence. Everything else does, and everything else needs to be analyzed, and everything else needs to exist as a quantum bit on some level. But the fact that I experience the very existence of Mikra as being part of what the world is, because I experience it directly in what I am, means that I am the only one that entirely views myself always on that cusp of interrelationship between Carrie and Kriya. Because that's all there is in me. It's the only thing that I detect. I don't need to be told about Kriya, because that's all that I see. Since the one thing that is astounding to me is the thing that everybody else takes for granted. All of this brilliant analysis by Bilam and by Amalek all takes one thing for granted. And what is that thing that's taken for granted? That there is Mikra. Well, of course there's Mikra. What else would there be? What else would there be? Nothing. How come that never occurs to you? Why is there Mikra? Why isn't there nothing? How do you explain the fact that there isn't nothing? If that doesn't shock you, then it's no wonder that everything is cold and hopeless. Well, of course, what is, and what is Mikra, and whatever can come out of that is only random, essentially. You make of it what you want. But if my existence is the one thing that I don't make what I want, and that's the only thing that I've discovered about anything, is that experience of being, and then there would never be a veloyut boshashu. Because then everything is totally vulnerable. This is why any half-decent existential philosopher will be, as Kierkegaard was, seized with fear and trembling. It's not a fear and trembling of something happening to me. It's the fear and trembling in the presence of being. It's why not being able to do anything with being, it will be defined by Sartre's nausea. What does it mean to be immersed in being and to be nowhere? It's an unbelievable thing. That clarity, and only that clarity, is the relationship to the Anova that makes it impossible for Moshe to assume that because of the fact that I was told to build a Mishkan to speak to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, obviously I'm being called on to walk in. You are lucky to be here. Is there something else you'd like? But it just never occurs to me. What do you mean, go in? Just again, because it's a midah gufanit. It's because I don't experience anything else in the flesh. Only that way is it possible to really come in touch with what your life is about. Only in that fashion is it possible for you to say, what an idiot I am. I better learn to like and not do what I feel is my right to have a wife that I like, why won't you like? Of course, something that is yours, you will like. Elamai, you have different ideas of what should be yours, what shouldn't be. Where does that come from? In this world of being, where does that come from? So there's Adam Arishon with the only other person that it's possible to have a relationship, but no, that's what makes it a problem. There ought to be more available. Bigger mikra so I can choose. Make it specially my own. And then it's more your own? Then it's better your own? Well, then it's less your own. Idiot. Elamai, you have an insufficient kriya, because the kriya is not coming from the force of being itself. Something about the fact that you're here is evident to you. Once that you're blind to that simple fact, everything falls apart, because then you will need to find significance in your being. If you need to find significance, you need to find God, or some system of reference, or some system of belief, and you'll start now projecting the other things that must be the world is like, because this is what it would be if I were to make it the way I like to make it, you know. And therefore, there can't be mikra, because if I were God, I would want people to know I care about them, so I would never do anything with mikra. Everything would be exactly put together the way it's supposed to. And every other stupid thought, in which it's just astounding that humanity as a whole has learned that every thought has always been wrong. Everyone. Every shita has always been wrong. Every belief about the reality of something has always been wrong. Invariably. There's not a single thought that was ever right that any brilliant philosopher ever had. But it's an unbelievable thing. So when are you going to accept the fact that you are stupid and that the world is continually growing in terms of your ability to understand it, and your capacity of mind is growing along with it, and that it's all an evolutionary process in which every new piece of data forces a review of everything up until that point and seeing it in a completely different way, in which for all intents and purposes it might just as well have been wrong, because it was a tiny piece of reality which you took to be reality, and now you're suddenly, oh my God, oh, how can you be so stupid? And it's invariably coupled with that. Once you know something, it's, how could I have been so stupid not to know that? And every generation will look back at it. How could they have been so stupid not to know that? How could they have been willing to die to fight against what's sitting there in front of their noses? And you think you're different.
You have to go with what you have, right?
Yes, but it doesn't become now a desperation to hold on the contrary. So all of this sense of vulnerability, and this is the Ibn Ezra's understanding here, Bichlal, of the terror of Purim itself. So now you're going to take for granted that Yud Gimel Zman Kehila L'Kol. I mean, but I already know what happened. So then you don't know what happened. If you already know what happened, you don't know what happened. So either you feel that terror that they felt, which is what Tainus Esther is about, or you have no connection to it. It's just another degree of lo yitboshashu. Therefore, Chazal were kovea that dafka, that yom that was supposed to be Zman Kehila, that's the day of pachad, says the Rabbi, says the Ibn Ezra. It's an ingenious insight, because there is no deeper pachad than the recognition that every sense of limitation of the nature of information, just to the interrelationship of Kriya and Keri, is doomed by definition to being locked into a prison in which you will be on some level religious, whether you believe in the Darkin religion, or whether you believe in the Yoshka religion, or whether you believe in the so-called Jewish religion. All of it is garbage. Makes absolutely no sense, and you will never have any connection to it. And it doesn't matter whether it has analogs in truth, because analogs are useless. What's that? Exactly, as Rashi puts it. Analogs are useless. And therefore, you begin to get desperate. So with that sense of desperation,
but missing another slide.
No.
No, that's
No,
despair.
it's better than that.
Desperate. No, despair and desperate are not the same thing.
Let's look up morphics.
We're looking up a translation.
Look up translation.
Here we go. That's how she is. Desperate, desperate.
Yeah, the only word they have is noash.
Yeah,
That's horrible.
so those things.
Noash is better. It's not miuash. Noash
noash.
is not miuash.
Yeah.
Tremendous difference. Noash is much closer to desperate, big driven by your
It's
youth.
like that there's a sorrow that you need.
That's it. Noash has that sorrow. Desperate has that sorrow. Miuash means you've given up. Noash means you're so in need of not being miuash that you do everything. No, noash milah tova.
So this is Vignore who says that Anova is such a high Rodriguez. And how does that speak?
It's not the giant.
This is Vignore, and this is Shaw.
Okay, yeah, I can't fit everything in for you right this minute.
That would bring us to place an ace, but I don't know.
Yeah, he also says it's not to try Madrigal. Because you can come, mitoch Hanover, you can come to my, but the Madrigas that he's talking about are Madrigal that are not Gufani. But after not Gufani Madrigas, Anova is Gufani. That's his finish. So
So
the
all
main
the
of
other
it-
Rodriguez before Nova old Bufanir. Zeros, no.
Measure. We like food. No, don't be sorry, but I can't deal with it right now. Not just this minute. So there's only two choices that you have. Either you battle this world with the pure assertion of what it is you'd like it to be, which will never get you anywhere, and which lead to your final appreciation of the hopelessness by the time that you're about to drop dead, of the same impossible entropy that has brought everything else to its death, or you recognize that the only meaning of tikva, of Yeshua, which we're going to celebrate tomorrow, the nature of the Chuasam, the Tikvasam, the Nitzchias, that idea is in terms of the recognition of the existential fact of Mikra, not the Anhaga fact of Mikra. That makes all the difference in the world, but it means that you need to discover within you the complete openness to the way in which you are, and whatever extent. You cannot contemplate the own insanity and the Yodea Tzadik Nefesh Be'en Tov, and you insist on it being something else, which is not Pigia, which is not vulnerable to the things that you know deep down that you are vulnerable to. In which you deny the impact of your own neurons, you deny the impact of your own experiences and the zichronos that have been lies that you've created. As long as you continue to do that, you are entrapped. And all of that is part of the Ad Lo Yada, the idea of Chayavin Shlevisune, that it is possible to come to a getter which you can quiet those neurons, that you use psychotropic substances that are related to the nature of the earth, that initially were so destructive, whether it's in terms of Noach, or whether it's in terms of the Yetzadas originally, or whether it's in terms of Nodav Avio and their attempt to tikkun with Yain, but that when it finally gets to a point where someone is willing to accept rather than fight for what he is, but finally willing to accept the Bria's reality of being there, which by definition will mean Mikra, because everything is there. And at that point, you can safely engage in Ad Lo Yada, because you do not need to assert. And in the end, you will experience, and this says the Gemara Megillah becomes the difference. That's part of the Viniflino. So Ketov Leva Malach B'Yayin, that's the Akum, that they're Pechazid and Eilalin and so on. That's all that it does for them, psychotropic. What good is it? Brings out the absolute worst of all of their fears and all of their emptiness and all of their desire to take and somehow make things a little less painful. Whereas Yisro will sit and will sing Shirais V'Tishbachos, will recognize the incredible experience of what it is to be there and to have these opportunities. And that is brought out for the first time fully in the absolute acceptance of Purim in terms of Purim. Then Mordechai is simply saying, look, this is the way the world is, okay? So what's your problem? So do something. Do whatever you can do. Why does it all have to make sense? Of course, there's witness that she brought him to that. No. What's the point of doing this, Mordechai? Okay, I don't know. So do whatever needs to be done. You decide what to do. Because it's your world. Once you've understood this, it's your world. This was the glory of Somu Alai. The brilliance of Tainus Esther that we still are experiencing in Tainus Esther. Can you imagine what it was like for every member of Klal Yisrael to fast for her? Remember that we needed to avoid Achot Yeshanim B'Beit HaMelech, right? Very careful. Nobody should think that she is going to be able to fix things. So why are we Tzomu Alai? Tzomu Ta'akadosh Baruch Hu, V'Hatzalah. Why Tzomu Alai? Try to put yourself into the situation. What would you do? Part of a population of millions that is stuck in this insane political milieu in which someone is there and is completely disempowered because she's in a position of being raped continuously, and it's a horrible tragedy, and everybody knows, my God, this is Mordechai's wife, and what are we going to do? And some more line for what? And you're in terror of the Nazis banging on the door, and the SS is coming, and you're supposed to be thinking of the success of Esther. So that means that the commitment to the Tzom was a commitment to being aware of this idea, the vulnerability to all possibilities. And you say, but why am I? Because anything can happen, that's why. But if anything can happen, why don't I ask God to save it? Because that's not the point. Anything can happen. But then if anything can happen, what's the point? Because anything existential can happen. Whatever makes a difference to being can happen, will happen. Do you believe that this makes a difference? Because that's the one thing that there's chiba to. It is an unbelievable immediate sense of chiba to know that things are being held in being. If you have that chiba, then when you say anything can happen, it almost means by definition, anything good. And all other elements are just temporary aberrations that you don't recognize as being part of the drive for being, that's all. What's that?
Why isn't that taking existence for granted?
Existence?
Yeah.
What do you mean? If I took it for granted, then anything really could happen. Then I would never be able to say, it's the fact that I don't believe that it can be taken for granted that I can say that that the last place that you will look for something to be useful, that's the place where it could be.
Because there is existence against this backdrop in which I know that there doesn't necessarily have to be existence. I
don't necessarily. I know there cannot be. Not necessarily. Existence is a violation. It's the only violation. Nothing else is a violation. That's the point. Existence is a violation, and as a violation, of nothing. And that's the most incredible violation imaginable.
so that it's clear that Kadosh Baruch Hu is
Capital N, nothing.
I don't need to talk about Kadosh Baruch Hu's or anything. Because I know whatever will serve that. All I need to talk about is Motzei Rishon. I don't need to give them names. I need to call them Makom Acher. Makes absolutely no difference. I don't care what it's called. It's the way things are. It's the first time I don't call names to some being that comes along and takes action. There is no action to take. It's just the idea of being Maxwell's demon. The energy is there. The potential is there. And if it's created in a way that provides for it, then believe me, it's available.
But then what motivates you to fast for her?
Sorry?
And then implies
If you're willing to be the Malka Macher. Only if, of course. That's why it has to be Tzomu Halai. Because it's the commitment, it's the Kriya that's the essential point. So if I'm Lo Tikarata Yaakov, you have other plans, then obviously you're not part of that at all. It's irrelevant to you.
So just do it as the people of the time that are fasting for Esther.
Good night. Sorry for keeping you so late. You driving back? You taking the car? You're coming tomorrow for your party with the car? Okay. Right.
If I see that there's a Kriya, that there's a Revach HaHatzalah,
Right.
what would motivate me to specifically need the Esther solutions?
Because the meaning of that kriya is only a kriya to mikra. And therefore, the only thing that it provides me is the opportunity for kriya. The only way to respond to such kriya is with kriya. There's nothing about existence that is antithetical to mikra. On the contrary, everything about existence backs mikra. Why? To allow for kriya. Okay, so therefore, either you're going to do something about it or forget it. Nothing's going to happen. That's what Mordechai is telling her. Because of the fact that this is what it means to be, you better be that mokum.
But then I'm not open to the possibilities. I am feeling the desperation that I need.
Then it
Esther.
won't work.
If I pick
Won't
my
work.
course, so to speak,
Won't work.
which is Esther,
No, that's the steer in the Gemara. On the one hand, we have to make everyone feel ein lach achot bebeit hamelech, and on the other hand, we have to have tzumu alai. What are these people? How do they understand that? It's brilliant. It means that every person is called upon to understand what Mordechai said to Esther. Without the beit of Yichtovedu. It's unbelievable. It's such a level of sophistication and it's shocking.
But I know it works for her. How does it work for the
No, if you're capable of participating in that fact, it works for you. Because you become the one who is the kere for the Atzloch of Esther. And you recognize that that's what needs to happen. Which is why the whole thing becomes a sensitivity of everyone to everyone else. We now find ourselves to all be vulnerable to what that power of being does. I start to care about Mishloach Manot. I start to care about Evyonim. In other words, I have a sense of your mind now for the first time. Whereas before, all I saw was the stupidity of my own needs and our competitiveness and so on. To the point that I even make takonas to allow for those differences. People that live in those kind of cities had a different kind of experience. They have this kind of experience, and so on and so forth. And it's all fine. It's great. No problems of lo titko to do. On the contrary, no. And the kfar b'nei kfarim, because of their relationship to the b'nei krachim, we give them special dinim and so on. It's like wild. Something that never happens anywhere else. Alternatives, alternative days. Why not? Yomim Harbeh. What is Yomim Harbeh? It's supposed to be a holiday. What's going on?
There's more democracy.
More mikra, more potential. But the fact that each individual was called upon to at least appreciate that level of sophistication, it's just amazing. So of course it became a kibu v'kiblu ayudim. It was a national discovery. It was a blitz of completely new way of looking at reality. To appreciate, to be able to say that Shachar means no Nisim. Alavai, today people would feel that way. Everybody wants is Nisim. But Nisim. That's what you don't need is Nisim. What you need is for you to be makir, the nature of the relationship of Kriya. But to you, Kriya means, God, this is what you have to do for us. Right. As far as Esther was concerned, Marata Esther, Aleph Beit Gimel Dalet Hey Vav Nu, Kechol Atanoim Kechol Amoraim. What do you want? Well, obviously, I mean, if I understand it's a world of Vayikra, I haven't worked out. I would think I'm stupid to try to work it out. That's the last thing I'll do. I'll take every possible option. And it's exactly what quantum mechanics does in the end. Every possible action. So all she's doing is a Feynman diagram. But the difference is that she is convinced that it's against the backdrop of Chiba. That's the only difference. But it's those people who recognize that darga of Mikra, except that they don't believe it means anything. That's the only difference, is that Aleph Zeira, the Reshit Goyim Amalek Keneged, the Reshit Yisrael, and the dreams of Bria. That's all it boils down to, is the question of whether you could stand above it and see it from the point of view of non-being, which is the Sukkah and the Seicha Baruch HaKodesh, which is the Beis of Bereshis, which is Ayin. That's where it comes from. That's what Rabbeinu Bachman explains, right? The Beis of Bereshis is drawing from Ayin. If you're able to stand on non-being, then everything is solved. But once you take that one step down, then everything is ruined because of the Lo Yitboshashu. The raya will always be dat be'em to lo aviyoda. Not dat yona aviyoda. He doesn't know anything. The most basic things he doesn't know. And that's the amazing thing. These people are mamish. The level of chachma b'umay staymin. It's just not to be believed. Absolutely astounding. But what about the zikaron? What about the Torah? What about the recognition of what it is? That little olive zira is okay, but it's only an olive zira. It's little. But it's all that there is that makes a difference to you. So all of this stuff is meaningless. Unbelievable. You've gone to university for 30 years. You've found out everything there is to know at this point about Mikra and about forces and about Mesa and about the Zikaron in terms of biology and physics and every last cellular membrane and strange interaction and tracing back the DNA of every species. And you know nothing that makes any difference to you. You're amazed. But what are you amazed at? Not at the fact of Mikra, but at the amazing achievements of Mikra. That's a nice thing to be amazed about, but it's not enough. It leaves you cold. That's even an expression. It leaves me cold. I hear all of it, I understand all of it, and it leaves me cold. People literally feel that coldness. And it's tremendously damaging because it just takes away all of your love and all of your belief and all of your kiva. And it's tremendously mechayev. This is not a theoretical thing because it means that all of the things people are used to accepting it, well, this is the way I am, and this can't be changed, or I have a right to this, or, at this point in my life, I can expect to. I mean, you hear all these ridiculous words all the time, well, I've worked long and hard, I can expect to, or you think by this time I would have, at least that much respect, or blah, 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 until the guy falls into the grave with this blah, 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 blah. It's unbelievable. Entire lives of blah, 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 blah. I mean, absolutely nothing to anybody looking like he's out of his mind. Who promised you? Who said something? What respect? What are you? Who are you? Where'd you think you are? Astounding. Lo Yitboshashu. Just that one nekuda to learn how dangerous that Lo Yitboshashu is. And then everything becomes clear.
Wasn't this the Klach Nefesh for the whole class?
Yeah, so
No. Okay, so but we're talking about.
you're waving your hands like you're religious. Very dangerous. All right, ladies and gents, it's been a wonderful time. I thank you so much for having the patience to sit here and listen to me. I hope that some of it was shareable.
We're waiting for Shah to Ephes. Rabbi, the whole time you've been talking, there's this mosquito. I think about the Intush, they hard up every single
It's been sitting there since the beginning. It's like mesmerized by the shear. It didn't move a muscle.
It is not a yatush.
It is an
It is a
anti-Yiddish.
Yiddish eater.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a very.
That's why it's so big.
It's a very valuable little bug. Its
It looks like
food
a
is
male.
Yitushim. It looks, but it isn't.
How does that mean, no?
Ah, Mikra.
Rabbi Sly, do you want?
Ask Richie, he'll tell you.
Yeah. I mean, it's part of the knowledge. That's you learn.
All right, now it's time for questions.
Tomorrow, 8:30.
Now it's time to behave. Questions are part of Lohit Bashash.
Not necessarily.
No. Could we wait till tomorrow?
This it might be turned to this here.
Okay, if you think it'll be term, it's directly, okay, I was,
Tomorrow,
Our source.
tomorrow at 8:30, same time, same place.
שהם הולכים, אני חושב שאתה אומר את זה בעברית עוד פעם?
כן, בוודאי.
אוקיי.
לא, רק אחרי שאתה יוצא.
הם הולכים, אני
רק כשהם... Wait, he's supposedly asking questions.
Everybody has at some point randomly sensed that there is fever and have some access to it. Or does it have to come from the outside?
I think that everybody seems to have the brain capacity. In other words, the brain has evolved to provide that. Because remarkably, even people who don't have it at all can be stimulated by cranial-magnetic stimulation to actually experience it. Yeah. And it comes as a total shock.
Wow.
Yeah. Certain areas of the brain.
Deal with your
They're utterly shocked. They never like. Well, I mean, he's an honest. He's not an Adam, but it means that he has the brain capacity.
You do it to an animal? I wonder, this is cool.
It's parts of the brain that barely exist. Most of the cerebral cortex.
This realization is what the National Chaim refers to in the Ein Mulvade, when the sakana of the actual existence of the Adam is on the scale, and the person can have a realization of Ein Mulvade that the whole existence is just a gift and
Yeah, it's part of the result.
Get to the Mitzidoi that he creates existence, not just be in the Mitzidei. The National Chaim seems to be busy with the actual existence. Something b'shas sakana, a person can realize the fact that existence exists at all. Is that the Nekuda?
I don't know if it's the Nekuda because you're trying to fit everything into your hand.
No, I'm trying to understand.
That's not true. If you'd listen to me, you'd believe me. I'm telling you, I know of which I speak. It's a big mistake that you make, but yes, it's true. But it's not true in the way you're saying it. The words are true, but the context is not quite true. And that little tiny difference spells all the difference. It's very difficult to explain exactly what that difference is, but it's an attempt to reinsert something that is new into something that you believe you already knew. And that's going to happen because of it is that you won't know anything new.
I'm trying to take most of it. He's told it to me a few times.
No, again, it's a pattern. It's a pattern. That's your comfort level. The way that you attempt to assert that comfort level is by making sure that it relates to something that has already been clear to you. And thereby, it won't be saying anything because you already knew that. That's a protective device. It's not the truth. The first thing that we do is shield ourselves from that ultimate. Try to show them pretend that we're alive. They try to hide it, so they try to hide the truth. That's what your psychology does. It's a real word, scientists like this.
And you meant by saying that one should start with the base, you read it.
That's interesting. They ought to do Rambam is Mechayev. No, the discover is if it's true. But the Ilchas Deis is the cure. It's to act upon the animal.
What do you mean by this?
כך צריך לחפש בדעות רעות שיש לו ולשוב מן הכעס ומן הקנאה so on and so forth. לחפש. It's not something that's evident. Everybody actually persuades themselves that they're normal. There's nobody who's normal. All of us completely and totally mad. It's very, very difficult to know in which way we're mad because we're so used to it. So you need, that's what Rambam says, you need to go to a psychiatrist. Rofei HaNefashot. Fine, so go to Rofei HaNefashot. Certainly to stare in the mirror and to keep telling yourself you're okay is a disaster. It's frightening. Right?
That's the Macholot Daga. That's the Macholot Daga.
That's the Macholot.
If one really reaches the dark of Bosch, then he can be.
It's an amazing thing, by the way. You know that there's this Kabbalah among Jews. Never to let an infant look at itself in a mirror. Yeah.
Until it's too, you said. I don't think it's.
Yeah, until it's of an age that it has the intelligence of a magpie. In other words, it can figure out that it's looking in a mirror. But otherwise, it will become its vision of external reality. So it's the ultimate mecholot.
One's Bosch.
Joe, these old ladies, well, oh my God, it's like the ultimate poison. Get the mirror away. You've seen this, huh? Yeah.
I was just thinking of selfies.
World of mirrors.
The evolutionary energy required for developing the brain, the amount of energy that the amount of fats that needed to be eaten of hunting large animals because man was developing a larger brain which allowed him to survive. Just in this mix of what does it take to survive, it's not just
Oh, this is amazing.
and know exactly how to put it in, but it's, the Bria requires investing more energy in order to have the brain, which enables it to have the.
That's specifically with the consumption of meat.
Not just meat and fat, because just eating the meat, the energy for the consumption would do
It's probably also the cooking of the meat. In order to-
made a tremendous difference in the growth of the brain, so there's the time, yeah.
It's also a yikra.
the meat's fat.
It's all Vayikra. All dinim of achila. That's
But that would, there's an amazing
Nice.
article that just came out. Is that right?
Send it to me. No, I've been working on this for almost a year.
Those drawings were only animals.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking of what is the, even in Hegel's first carbon, Umeichel Vehed. Like, what is the point of fat? Fat is storing energy for the future because I may need it. So there also is an element of this carbon.
very interesting. Very, very interesting.
אז למה כולם רוצים לעשות דיאטה?
אתה צודק, זה משהו חדש הדיאטה.
אנחנו אוכלים משמעית.
לא יהיה להם אנרגיה לעתיד.
Ready?
Yeah.
Like a miracle.
I don't know how a person expands to the level of getting outside himself in order not to go. I don't know how you learn it without that. I'm trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Everything has to be built on something before. That's how
Not
you explain it.
necessarily. Can be built on questioning what you know before. It's also a way of building
Right,
up.
then it's denying what you do. It's also denying. So it comes to the same thing.
This is related to the question I wanted to ask.
What is that?
Just what it would really.
I'm asking you whether you have questions that are going to expand on the. Okay, fine. Just keep it in mind.
Maybe not.
Okay, but I'm asking if you think, not maybe not.
So, just what it would mean to actually have that sense of not non-entitlement. Like, in other words, it's all very nice to talk about, it's just like the nice of when you get down to it, it's the same sense of vulnerability will still always.
Not true. It's because you're confusing physical vulnerability with existential vulnerability.
You have to get past
Or
your
you're,
physical
or you're
vulnerability
confusing
in order.
psychological vulnerability with existential vulnerability. Those types of vulnerability generally lead people either to desperation in terms of religion, or desperation in terms of psychology, or desperation in terms of mechanics, or desperation in terms of what they call success, or whatever. But it's strategies, but they don't lead to this. They don't lead to the discovery of awareness. They don't lead to being one step up on the Godelian ladder to get beyond the interrelationship of Vayikra
And what,
at all.
and what does
It leads in the opposite direction.
What does lead to? You find that we hate Amalek because Amalek tries to bring that out in us. In other words, it's part of the reason why we don't esteem as a useful kli in order to get beyond is because it endangers you and it tries to bring out.
But it only endangers you when you don't attack them from this level of zikar. So normally, it's the same thing. Lo taturu would have prevented this whole shear. Why are you discussing things that shouldn't be discussed? Why are we talking about Amalek? Why and so on? But in the context of Purim and in the context of the discovery of Sof Kol HaNisim, in that context, it becomes like the das of the Anshe Knesses Hagdala. Ein Gvurotav. Ein Norotav. That's what I'm saying. The only way to deal in the end is to come to grips. And by the way, it's amazing because this is true even in terms of the gufanit. Even this level they have captured. Because you want me to show you coming to grips from the point of view of Amalek? This is a brilliant thing. There is a major problem with the nature of information. And that major problem is the fact that there is a limit, which is the quantum limit, to your ability to be certain. To be certain. In other words, once you hit the uncertainty principle, so now you can no longer get any more down in your computing. So this is like an absolute limit to Moore's law. You're not going to be able to keep doubling the amount of and so on and so forth, right? So if you want to calculate, so what is the ultimate cost? How far can I go before I hit the limits of digital computing? Obviously, I can no longer compute digitally if I can't say 1 or 0. I can't say maybe to be a digital computer. So what is the teretz to that problem by those who are Bekiim? Ingenious teretz, brilliant teretz. This is Feynman's teretz. Embrace Mikra. Stop trying to use digital computers. Make quantum computers that don't use Turing machines. Let the computer discover its own state, which will be the solution to your problem. Utilize entanglement. Utilize uncertainty. Utilize the fact that something is neither 1 nor 0. Make a computer out of Schrodinger's cat. It will be able to do things that no normal computer would ever be able to do for the whole length of the life of the universe. You're going to compute the factors of a prime of 2 to the 100th power? Are you crazy? Yeah, you could do that if you were able to live 1,000 times as long as the universe existed, sure. But why not do it almost instantly using a quantum computer that's built on the uncertainty in the first place? It'll just examine every possibility at once and end with the only one that works. That's the way to do it. Forget about digits. That's only for people who need to know things. If you don't need to know anything, that's perfect. It's exactly this Nakuda in the world of information. Amazing. It's exactly the same movement. It's unbelievable, isn't it? It's like so. It's the totality of the Zelu Matzeh, the brilliance of it. It's just, it's wonderful. Huh?
Could it work?
Sure, of course it can work. It has worked.
For quantum computing?
I mean, they're very primitive so far, but they certainly solve things that no normal computer can solve.
So then what? So then
That
you just,
Yeah. Well, I can say that could never solve in that time that it solved, not to that extent.
So that, okay, another question also.
Ezrat Hashem. For some of the time. Some of the time I'm going to be a nani. In the morning I'll be a nani. דורון, אתה בא לאפיית המצות?
לא, לא יכולת להפסיק מכות היום, לא בא.
רגע, תבוא. תגיע!
הרב עובדיה נותן סתירות כאלה, פח!
כן, נו.
כל רבי יש...
בדרגה של הרב עובדיה.
הרב היה שכן שלי.
כן, אני הייתי השכן שלו.
זה עובר אליי השינה.
אתה יודע? אני גרתי לידו.
באיפה?
בשיכון חב"ד. אני גרתי בשיכון חב"ד, הוא גר ברחוב אלי הכהן. התפללנו ביחד באותו בית כנסת. כן, למי כן היה לי שייכות? לחכם אבא שאול, בן ציון אבא שאול, אז היה לי שייכות טובה מאוד. כן, ידידות טובה מאוד. משהו. הוא גם כן גר באותו אזור.
הוא גם כן מה?
גר שם, באותו אזור, בשיכון חב"ד. נפלא. ואז זה היה חדש ממש. שיכון חב"ד זה היה 53 שנים. זה היה ממש הכל חדש.
זה הכל היה ריק שם.
ריק, ממש. רחוב, הכל הרחוב הזה בעולם לא היה. זה היה, הכל היה פשוט אדמה.
מה אתה זוכר?
לא, מה אתה זוכר? לא היה זה כבר עוד הרבה שנים לא היה. אבל אפילו זה לא היה, אפילו הרחוב, היום זה הרחוב הראשי. מי חלם שיש שם רחוב בכלל.
מתי יופי מצות?
בה' ניסן.
זה עוד המון זמן.
הזמן הזה זה רק עם ה...
So that means that Rebbe will return from America beforehand.
It's our own code.
בסדר, אני אשמח.
כן?
לא ראיתי אף פעם.
כן, אתה חייב לראות, חייב לעבוד. מה עם משה לב? האם הוא יבוא? לעשות מצות?
מתי?
ניסן. Mark and I have calendar.
I will do it right now.
Our matzot require big smiles. Otherwise they don't taste.
There's gonna be water?
We don't do water.
Wait, do you guys? Matzah.
It's baked matzah, believe it or not, in the yeshiva.
Yeah?
It is yeshiva.
All right, let's do it.
There's a chance you would be in America between now and then? Oh,
I mean, chance, you know.
chance, yeah.
Chance of a lifetime.
Could I
Can't
just
stick
ask
up,
you-
yeah.
Right, so first of all, we also talked about on Shabbos, the idea of the midah b'fanit in a very positive sense. In other words, that
Yeah, I'm talking.
in other words, the way the Rabbeinu Bachler talks about it also is that the midah gufanit leads to the midah sichlit of anava. So in other words, that there's a
Kira.
but I think also of a higher level of anava. So in other
Of
words,
course.
if you really have the midah, and we had it contrasted on Shabbos the ga'ava of Bilam, which masks itself as a nivus, which so I just wanted to just be only because it seems to be that the experiential sense of the midah gufanit seems to be very much part of the nature of how you're supposed to experience Purim as a whole. Is part of the chayvin issue of Sumi as we mentioned. But it would seem to be that would also be a key to being able to relate to this point that I think Rafi was also asking about of the nikud of what it would really mean to experience that year. In other words, the year that Rafi was asking about, right? What? The experience of existence and the experience of what it would mean to be connected to the Shekhinah without the Chiva.
You what about it?
Forget about Rafi. I don't think Rafi relates to what you're saying, but you talk about what you want.
Okay.
So
So just to allow you to connect to the Chiva seems to be through the midah gufanit, but it just
but that's so very true, because the only thing that the first step in escaping the concept of what you are is creating a self that has nothing to do with the behemoth. And when you do that, you, by definition, have lost your most fundamental connection to the realities of your life. In other words, if you could conceive of your thinking as being unrelated to the way the world is, then you are identifying yourself with something that is not part of everything else that you know, which is an existential shock. It's the same taking for granted that this is something else that leads you into that problem. This is one of the reasons that it was so incredibly difficult for people to figure out that there is some connection between information and energy, because the thinking never seemed to be related to anything physical. It was the last holdout of vitalism, essentially, of that same approach of vitalism. Thinking, I understand I need neurons to think, but it's not that the thinking per se is physical. It can't be represented in bits, in quantum units. That's crazy. When it turns out that everything that you see is you're looking at the matrix. You're looking literally at streams of information all around you that you're pretending are tables and are lights and are so on. Streams of literal information, all entangled, literally entangled. And the elements of what you're made, many of the atoms are entangled by definition. H2 is an entangled, its electrons are entangled. And that's its behavior. And that's embedded in all the things that are around you. The fact that all around you is streaming Feynman diagrams of information that's constantly churning is something that you have to learn to see. Otherwise, you live in a world that's not there. You live in a world of your imagination. Structures that make it easier to walk around. You have no idea of the joy it is to walk down the street and to see it in that fashion. To take a look at a leaf and to watch the photosynthesis, essentially. to see the streams of energy and the quantum determination that are going to allow photosynthesis to take place in the sugars that are created, the greater your awareness is of the reality of what's happening around you. And all of these interchanges, the deeper is your connection to what it is that's happening in reality. It's a different life. It's a totally different life. So it takes a different level of a nivra to be able to lead that life.
But that's a whole different backdrop, right? Because a lot of people have that information without having any connection to
No,
what that
because
means.
because again, it doesn't occur to you that that is a being question. It's just the way things are a question. The way things are a question.
Well, why is it a question?
The way things work, the way things are, the way things behave, the way things. It's fascinating and wonderful and expansive, but it's all midah gufanit.
So what's the being question?
Why is it there?
Uh,
Why am I experiencing it? What does that even mean? Where am I experiencing it? What's the I that experiencing it? How did any of it come? Why is there something? What does it mean that there's something? That's insane. How could there be something?
Aren't all these questions generic? You could ask the same question looking at a leaf as looking at a table as looking at a human is
Of course.
staring at a black hole.
Yes, of course. The more you understand how it's all one thing, the more it's all the same question. If you see a trillion things, you get tired of asking that question because then you just, well, I don't know. It's because there's something else that makes it that way. But when you understand there is nothing else, there's just that one reality, then that question becomes insanely powerful to you. The more rochok you are from the underlying actus of Mikra, the less it's troubling to you that things are. And that's why nobody asks these questions. But the closer you get to a sense of a unity, which boils down to all possibilities, the more insane it becomes to you that such a thing should be. It's literally mad. It's not just a question, it's absolute insanity. What do you mean? The shock at the total difference between being and non-being is too much to handle without it's leaving you in complete shock. But you need to practice that. Because to whatever extent it doesn't shock you, it's because of lo yitposhashu. That's all I'm saying.
So it is translated into itbushashu. If person sees as he.
Then it's yitposhashu by definition. No, that's right. That's where tzniut essentially comes from.
That's what's happening with Adam, where he doesn't realize that's what.
Exactly. That's why it ended up becoming
Is
disturbing. Huh? The yitposhashu is the immediate result. Right. Yeah. Yeah, because the truth is yitposhashu doesn't just mean yitposhashu in a behavioral sense either, although it's a midah gufanit, true. But it also has its existential element attached to it, busha. Because busha is the closest that we come to the sensation of non-being. Because when we say, oh God, I just want it to melt away, I want it to fall under the floor, what does all of that mean? But my being was a contradiction to what, that's crazy. An ass like me cannot be. That's the type of thing, right? So I'm like, how can I be there? I hate the discovery of my being in that context, right? That's all part of busha. That's why Gehenna essentially is busha, the tribe of non-being. That's the thing that you just can't take. The fact is, if you remember an embarrassing moment 50 years later, it's exactly as embarrassing as it was at the time, which is there's no other experience that is exactly the same as it was. None. Think of it. Everything time cures all, not embarrassment.
Flinch, literally flinch.
Because
Right, you physically flinch.
because you have a sense of being versus non-being.
Yes, yes.
Only
You just,
in
you
the
can't, exactly. So time has nothing to do with it. It's as if it's happening at this moment. Oh, God. Right? It's that same thing.
So true.
That is hell. I mean, that mamish, you get a sense, that's the sense of Gehenna, is that sense of non-being. It's horror. Absolute horror.
מי שמבייש זה שופך דמים.
כן, אבל זה שאתה מבייש את עצמך, זה כן. כן, אז זה באמת עניין.
But how does that help?
Speaking of existence and non-existence.
Speaking of being a non-being. Yeah, let's just hope there's nobody out there that's ready to clap at you.
Yeah. So how does,
Whoops.
how does one actually walk around with that level of Busha? It seems like it's like an unattainable kind of, it's like if you're supposed to walk around with a level of Busha, that's sufficient to not be able to use Kodraka, which is what Esther manages to achieve at the Kalchala, Malka, and all of these things. It seems on the surface level to just be dependent on your level of phenomenological awareness of how much you're aware of the being.
No, it's not phenomenological at all. Phenomenological wouldn't lead you to be embarrassed. It wouldn't lead you to Busha. It's not part of any phenomenon.
So then,
Phenomenological consciousness can lead you to taking a nice stone up with you to throw it, but not.
I was listening while clapping.
I know, but not to Busha.
So what would lead you to Busha? It seems to be that there's like a choice to be like stories for some of
One second. Hello?
That's an important question.
No, I'm in the middle of Shir.
Here?
Yeah.
This was just the first half of the year.
Can I call you back?
Hello.
Hello? Ow!
Oh, so sorry.
What?
I almost
I can't hear you. Yeah, at what time? In another 15 minutes? Yeah, it's at 6:15 your time. Yeah, sure. I'll Skype you, yeah, okay. Okay, sure, yes, great. Okay, bye-bye.
6 hours just to be standing here.
No, they're doing Kriyat Shema with the baby.
Oh, wow.
They want me to be there.
That's so nice.
So, okay, so what's your problem after attacking me without mercy?
Terrible. I almost got him too. I'm so sorry.
It was well worth it if it gets you home.
How does one cultivate this Busha? I think that was Moshe's.
Yes.
No, that wasn't. His question wasn't that. His question was, how are you supposed to live with this?
Well, both, really, because it's like my sense is that my feeling of how I use the Busha ends up leading to OCD, which means that it's not coming from the right place anyway.
I think the problem over here is that you are confusing the busha of a behavioral sense with the busha. I'm just using it as metaphorical. The busha of an existential sense brings you to a real experience of the intimacy, of the connectedness of your being to everything that is not you. So it leads you directly to yichud. Moshe Inke, Busha, in a behavioral sense,
It's the opposite.
leads you to doubting, the value of your existence. But it works as a very powerful metaphor if you can understand what Busha would be. In other words, Busha in terms of hate would be behavioral Busha, would be horrific. That's what the Ramchal says. If you could just imagine for 1 second fully what that would be like, you'd never do anything wrong again. It's because you don't fully imagine it.
You also wouldn't be able to
It's
live.
too hard for you to imagine it.
You also wouldn't be able to live.
No,
because
you
Kilo
couldn't do
Irani,
Shuvah. Not true.
Kilo Irani Adam, doesn't that come from that?
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily.
But what's the neutral in an existential sense?
The way in which Busha takes you away from any deserving assumption of being and would make you completely associated with being as it is, which is by definition outside of you. And therefore, it's the direct experience of the chiba. The direct experience of chiba would be in terms of that kriya from the complete understanding of lo yitbashashu, of what goes wrong with lo yitbashashu.
And
Because then that's all that's left to you. The only thing that you end up having is that chiba.
Is that
Chiba. There's nothing else.
Really, is teshuva an outgrowth of that, or is that
Is
an
what?
teshuva? Is teshuva an outgrowth of that, or is that an outgrowth of teshuva? I mean, like, how do you have a starting point?
Which
Because
I don't know what that is.
is that meaning the existential vulnerability?
No, sure.
Meaning, if somebody's able to utilize tshuva to escape himself, will that leave him with an existential vulnerability outside of his own construct of mind? Or will
I think it depends on the darga of the tshuva. I mean, people confuse the word tshuva with a CS tshuva versus shavuot. I mean, there's so many different dargas. I'm not sure what, if you're talking about the derech of tshuva, to tshuva, really it makes a tremendous difference. Obviously, simple mechanical busha can lead you to the sensitivity of wanting to do tshuva. And then, after doing the tshuva, you can experience more real busha. But the opposite is also true. If you're coming to a dark of tshuva, mitoch avat Hashem and so on and so forth, then it's the other way around. So, I know there's a clear-cut answer to that, without defining exactly what you mean by the tshuva. It's such a comprehensive. Yes. And it says everything to do with tshuva here. The idea of Purim, like Yom Kippurim. It is a day of tshuva. It's a deep day of tshuva. This Aveda is a profound Aveda of tshuva.
opens you up?
But this is like the ultimate tshuva in a sense, in which the tshuva from Lo Yitbashashu is the ultimate tshuva. I mean, that was what went wrong with my separations. So obviously, it's going to be the hardest thing to achieve, but it's the path of achievement. And the world leads to it. That's the beauty of it in all of these things. The world leads to the things that need doing. That's what's so amazing. So all around, everybody is discovering everything that needs to be discovered, and it's still totally open to that last and the only meaningful tiny bit.
The bit that emerges, the creator.
It's amazing. And to see it actually happening in front of you, it's mind-boggling.
Is the
There you
creator.
go. Who could think up such a thing?
Right.
No, that's the point. Really, I mean, what? And it takes no time at all. It just does it all. It's truly mind-boggling. What a power. Wow.
Right, so could I just have
I
another?
mean, you think Google is something.
I think just in 15 seconds I could summarize what I think was the answer to the question, and then we can actually let Rabbi go to sleep.
I have to be with the kids in a minute.
Okay, yeah. So just is it possible that the point is that there's a
Is this still on?
Yeah.
Oh.
there's a drisha of that there's a drisha possible of reality, but that drisha would force you out of your own terms and out of your own but that drisha would be a real, instead of being limited by your level of awareness or your
It's a
level.
pasuk that the Gemara Marcus says. Dirshuni v'chyu.
Right.
And the only reason the Gemara is docha that as the ultimate of the Hamida Malachas is only because how can you be sure that it means Dirshuni directly and not Dirshuni with Kol HaTorah? So then it wouldn't be Hamida Malachas. But otherwise,
in terms of the Maisa, really is.
Otherwise, in terms of Maisa, really, once we know Tzadik B'Emunato Yihyeh, that it really is possible to be Hamida Malachas, then there's no reason to assume that Dirshuni is different. I would imagine. At least it's possible within the context of Tzadik B'Emunato Yihyeh.
So then there's never, when you're really capable of doing that, then there's never a way that you'd run, that you would retreat back into your comfort zone, because that would be the thing that you're most afraid of doing, because you'll lose.
I don't know that there's ever and ever.
But
There's
that's
always
during the
surprising
fight.
new comfort zones. Until the Bria's Mushlam, there's always new things that you're discovering that you never would have believed were as crazy as they are. So when you're discovering about reality, you discovered about yourself. Just as you're sure that this is exactly the issue that is finally right, it turns out it's exactly the issue that's wrong.
Finally right.
It's always like that. So I'm saying stop believing anything that you think. It's invariably wrong. To have found out over thousands of years that not one thing has ever been right, it's pretty shocking. It's truly shocking. I'd like never to have a doubt about maybe this time it's the same as it's always been. This time I know. It's unbelievable.
Yes, Tom and Nick.
How does everybody live with having good share?
That's why every year is different. Seriously. Everybody else gives the same share all the time.
Doesn't quantum theory leave that open? Like, doesn't quantum theory?
No,
address
quantum
that?
theory is also developing unbelievably.
Yes, I'm saying.
I mean, the issues of information theory and the changes that it's caused quantum theory is just
Are there
amazing.
contradictions to?
It solves most of the contradictions.
It doesn't, that's what I'm saying, doesing quantum theory
Not fully.
address
No, not yet.
to the extent that maybe this is?
Not yet.
Okay.
Not yet. But
I'm just saying that
there's too much that's still open that doesn't make any sense. There's very fundamental contradictions.
But
There's two different levels of reality and so on. And so on.
would be analog to a real. It's just what works.
We'll see.
I'm
They're
asking.
shooting with you.
That what you'd be searching
Sure
for would
that
be
Skype
something
is
that's real.
Make sure Skype is on.
Remy? Here's my creation of Shultina.
He's gonna stay here to Skype.
Rebbe,
Yeah, it's big one.
can I leave this back? Yeah? I'll get it tomorrow. So I'm gonna come through tomorrow. I'm gonna go back with Gavino.
Yeah.
And come through tomorrow. Is it okay to leave this?
Sure.
This should,
Is that a good enough place for it? Sort of bent over.
Whatever's out the way. I mean, as long as it won't be moving around.
It's on.
Yeah, I'm afraid that they're gonna call while I'm in transit. I'd much rather go home, in all honesty. I'll take a risk.
Worst case, can the worst case can is Rabbi would miss the whole thing? In other words?
Gavi? Could you put the mic in the,
Should I
Drew, did you,
close
yeah, so
the-
disconnect
We
now.
finished.
Okay, let him finish up. Stop broadcast.
trying to-
I'm leaving the envelope sound, right? And there's